So I'm going to start by saying this very important thing before I go on with the video on what it's about. I do not owe anything to Konami or Kojima. I'm not invested emotionally in the problems between Kojima and Konami. I don't care about that. It has never been a problem to me. I respect what Konami has done with their game catalog, Castlevania, Metal Gear. Regardless of who it is that they've hired, they've made great decisions in that sense. And then it's been downhill since they canned Kojima. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say here is that I'm not one of those people that are going like, oh, if a game is released by Konami and Kojima is not in it, I will not support it. That has never even crossed my mind. I certainly don't understand when people get emotionally invested with the person instead of what they created. Like that they defend this person like they know that person at all, when they don't. Maybe they shook his hand in a convention and now they feel like, oh, his problems are my problems. I think that's dumb. Whatever happened between them, that's their problem. And there's one thing that mature people understand is that there are always two sides to every story. So even if Kojima was canned for the right reasons, and I will explain what I mean by that, him being fired and Konami executives having a problem with him because of this, the way that he was handling the project with MGS5, this is not my concern. My concern as a consumer of their products is how much bang for the buck am I getting from buying one of their games. Because to me, a great video game is supposed to be an investment that allows you to be entertained for a long time, right? What is good entertainment? Anything that you invest a certain amount of money in, but you get so much more in return, right? So for me, there are two video games that have matched the amount of hours and dedication I have given to them, that their value in terms of longevity and entertainment is so high compared to the amount of money I paid for them. That is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which I continue to purchase in every version that comes out. But still, the amount of entertainment I have gotten out of that game is incredible. So the ROI, if you could say, return on investment on that game has been insanely good. The same thing happens to me with Metal Gear Solid 5. Now, people complain about this game. There's a missing mission. I don't care about any of that BS either. I don't care about a missing mission. To me, the missing mission being about Eli, and then just Eli floating out into the sunset with Psycho Mantis, that to me is no special ending. I don't care if that was deleted. Sure, it would have been a nice addition, but that wouldn't have changed the fact of all the hours I've spent playing Metal Gear Solid 5 and all the entertainment that I have gotten out of, and still I'm getting that entertainment from that game 10 years in. And with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, 30 years in. So what I'm getting at here is that the ROI on those two games is massive. Sure, some people, it's not their cup of tea. If you don't like flawless gameplay and a game that allows you to play every mission in a 1,000 different ways, then that's your problem, not mine. So I'm not here to try to convince you that MGS5 is the best game ever made. There are plenty of people that agree with this sentiment. And it has nothing to do with missing stories. Obviously, the game could have been better in terms of how it was presented. I will go into that in another video. This is not the case here. What I want to make sure that you understand is that from my point of view, Metal Gear Solid 5 is the pinnacle of the MGS series with the best gameplay, and that is what gives it such an amazing value, right? Whereas all the other Metal Gear Solid games in the past, including 4, which I loved, by the way, but the gameplay was so stiff and it feels so outdated and so subpar when compared to MGS5. Like, pretty much everything feels subpar. Not just Metal Gear Solid games, like any game. I haven't played any game up to this day that plays as well as MGS5. So, what am I getting at here? If you go back to MGS3, MGS2, and pretty much every MGS before MGS5, they all play like crap. I don't care what you say. I don't care how much of a fan you are. I love Metal Gear. There's no gaming series in the world that is as good to me as Metal Gear. There's nothing out there that comes close to it. I am a big fan of the whole story, the lore, everything about MGS is amazing. But the gameplay was never the reason why I loved Metal Gear until Metal Gear Solid 5 came out. Then it was the gameplay. Then I could actually tell myself this is the perfect game. And it's in the perfect game in the universe of my favorite saga of games. So why is Delta going to flop in my opinion? Very simple. There's a very simple reason. Because Kojima is not involved. And it's not, like I said before, this is not about me supporting Kojima. The reason why I say this is that only Kojima had the emotional attachment to Metal Gear that made him so careful about how he crafted his games. I mean, this guy always went borderline bankruptcy with Metal Gear Solid games. Every time he pushed the envelope, every time he asked for more money, every single time he made a Metal Gear Solid game, he was pushing it in terms of how much time he was spending, how much money he was spending. The thing is that when it came to Metal Gear Solid 5, the amount of money and research and resources that he spent was so huge that Konami had to go like, okay, this is too much. And maybe this game is not going to be that good. And we have spent all this time. But they were wrong. Because Kojima's love for Metal Gear made it so that he could create the perfect game in terms of gameplay. Because I will say this, story-wise, it may not be the best Metal Gear, but it's good enough. But in terms of gameplay, there is no other video game on the face of the planet in this moment, not just Metal Gear games, but generally speaking, that plays as well and as smoothly as Metal Gear Solid 5. Because Kojima's love for Metal Gear is the only reason why he was so careful and methodic about making it such a perfect stealth game. Action stealth, by the way. Because if you want to go Rambo in Metal Gear Solid 5, there are so many ways to do that, and they all feel very satisfying as well. If you want to go stealth, it's also the most incredible stealth experience in the world. I mean, I know some people will disagree with that, but there are tons of people who will agree with that. And it doesn't really matter who agrees or disagrees. We're looking at a predominantly better product in Metal Gear Solid 5. If you go look at the reviews for Metal Gear Solid 5 on Steam, for example, there are endless reviews and it's predominantly positive, right? And you know how ruthless communities like Steam can be in terms of how they rate games. So that's a testament of the greatness of MGS5. And obviously, the old MGS games are also getting a lot of great reviews. I'm not saying they're not. Going back to the problem with Delta. Delta's latest gameplay is nothing short of laughable to me in terms of gameplay. Sure, it looks beautiful, but what I'm getting at is Delta suffers from being in the hands of people that do not care about the saga. You actually think that the executives at Konami are as emotionally invested in MGS as Kojima is? Of course not. They're not as invested. What they are invested in is a product that gives them money, right? And they want to squeeze as much money out of it without doing what Kojima did, which is to actually embrace the project in a way that was so much more intense. And that's what made Metal Gear great. From the very beginning all the way to MGS5. That's what has made MGS games incredible. This game is too much like the original in terms of the clunkiness. I know some people are complaining that the AI is crap and the original AI in MGS3 was actually better than this. But this is not what I'm talking about. The AI in the Metal Gear games has never been outstanding. It became the best possible AI in MGS5, but you can still do pretty dumb things and the AI is not going to notice that you're doing them. So, it's definitely not a perfect game. So in terms of AI, it's never been amazing. It has improved over time, but it's never been the strong point. The strong point at this point with MGS5 is the gameplay itself. and how the AI is good enough so that the gameplay is fun, engaging. You can actually do things in so many different ways. It's crazy. Even when the soldiers are always going to have a specific route every time you start a mission, even then, there's so many different ways to finish every single mission. I can't count the amount of ways that you can finish every single one of the missions in this game. It's crazy. So this is the reason why Delta is going to flop. Very simple. Very easy to understand. Konami is not releasing these with any sort of emotional attachment. To them, it's a cash grab because they had buried Metal Gear, but they actually noticed how incredibly successful MGS5 has been. Because in the scope of the surface of the internet where the trolls are always showing up, it may seem like MGS5 hasn't been that great, like a lot of people are complaining. But when you see the amount of acceptance the game has, the amount of positive reviews compared to the negative ones, then you realize that this is not a case of a game that flopped. It's a super successful release in terms of how many people have played it, how many people have purchased it. And sure, it has some DLC. Big deal, every freaking game has that now. It really didn't affect the greatness of playing the game itself, right? If you had or didn't have that DLC. So, MGS5 was the last really great game from the modern era, in my opinion. And it may just end up being the case now that everything is just about how flashy it looks, but it plays like crap, right? I remember being hopeful and saying, wow, maybe they're gonna be smart enough to actually use the Fox engine for MGS Delta. The same exact smooth gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 5 with the graphics of Delta and the story of Delta, and basically Delta with the gameplay of 5. That would have been the ultimate of all ultimate games. Not just in Metal Gear history, but in general. So think about the potential they lost with that. But it was probably a fact like, yeah, the Fox engine is part of Kojima's legacy. Let's not use that because Kojima's gone, right? Which is ridiculous. Why would you not use an engine that has been acclaimed worldwide for creating the best gameplay experience? This, in my opinion, is just going to be a game which I will tell you right now, I am definitely going to play it. I'm going to buy it. I am going to support Konami for this experience that they are bringing to us because it's still worth checking out. This is not about the game not receiving my support because it will. I will play it, but I am very sure, based on what I've seen so far, that the gameplay is not going to be good enough for me to turn this into my go-to Metal Gear game. My go-to Metal Gear game is always going to be the one with the best gameplay. And that is not Delta, according to what I've seen. And anyone that thinks that in a matter of a month, less than a month, the game's going to be out in less than a month now. So you can trust that there's not going to be any sort of major gameplay changes being made. So this is what you're getting. So let's enjoy it for the fact that MGS3 is getting a graphical overhaul and it's going to make the story way more fun and engaging. With that said, let's see what happens a month from now. Let's see what the game really feels like. But judging by what we're looking at and explaining to you guys my opinion on the reasons why this game is going to be bad is because there's no love, there's no soul involved. It's just about the paycheck. And I'm not saying that Kojima was never about the paychecks, but he got to the point where his creation was so brilliant that he could make it so that the paychecks he got from them came from something that he actually loved and believed in. He created a product that was loved and is still loved by millions. But because he's not in it, there's not enough emotional investment to ensure that the creations that come in from now on are going to be great. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you in the next one.